Its rapid growth had raised some difficult dilemmas. Distribution demanded increased record sales to drive its ever-expanding operation. The record label needed commercial success, but fiercely guarded its independent identity, built on the alternative credibility of its music. The perfect solution to all these problems came from a pair of ambitious songwriters from Manchester.
The only way that I could find any mental relaxation is to simply go out and walk, which can seem quite depressing to most people. But for me, it was perfect fuel, because then I would go home and I would write furiously. And I found that, for me, it was a brilliant outlet. It was the thing that helped. But also, you have to have a grain of hope, which is a very difficult thing to have.
The first day that we were officially like a partnership, which was the second time we got together, part of our get-together was just making this almost like mental wish list, if you like. And part of that conversation was we should sign to Rough Trade Records.
On a Friday afternoon in April 1983, Johnny Marr walked into the Rough Trade offices with a demo tape.
I said I wanted to see Geoff Travis, and I was kind of hustled out, really. But I kind of hung around, kind of pretending to be like doing stuff with records. And I was in there for an hour or two. And then I saw Geoff come out of his office, and I think he was a little taken aback. I think I actually grabbed his sleeve and stopped him, because he was trying to get away. And I gave him this cassette, and I said, I'm from Manchester, this is my band, The Smiths, and something along the lines of, you won't have heard anything like this before.
I took it home that weekend and listened to it about 20 times and was really intrigued by it.
Hand in glove, the sun shines out above behind. No, it's not like any...
You couldn't really make out the words, but it was something wonderful.
To Geoff's absolute credit, he called first thing on Monday and just said, this is the best thing I've heard for ages. And I want to sign it to Rough Trade. I want to put this single out. And it was like, OK, bullseye, that's what we're going to do.
The Smiths and Rough Trade were a perfectly timed marriage. The original impact of the post-punk, new wave and new romantic movements had passed. It was time for something new. That something was indie music, and it began with the Smiths.
I grew up on the Smiths. I mean, they defined my teenage years completely. So the first time I saw the name Rough Trade was on the back of Hand in Glove, the first Smith single. I didn't know Geoff Travis, didn't know Rough Trade, I didn't know anybody, I was a schoolboy. But the way I saw it was that it was a battle. It was alternative and independent, and to major record companies, that was a dirty word. They were the enemy. Rough Trade was the enemy. They were seen as just infiltrators, out to spoil the party, and groups like the Smiths were out to spoil the party for Simple Minds and Wet 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 and all this kind of rubbish. You know, and it was just rubbish.
Facing fierce competition, Rough Trade abandoned the principle of the no-ties 50-50 deal, and for the first time in its history, offered the band a conventional record contract, a long-term deal that guaranteed the label 4 albums.
The majors started inviting us to meetings and got interested in us, but we didn't want to be on a major and Rough Trade didn't want to be majors. It was a really great partnership.
Johnny puts the music down on a cassette and he gives me the cassette, and I live with the cassette for a few days, and I just wheedle words into the cassette, and then we just all get together and it just happens at the drop of a cassette.
Rough Trade gave the Smiths independent credibility. Morrissey and Marr put their new label into the charts at number 25, with release number 136.
When This Charming Man came out, it wasn't just that things were going in the right direction. I mean, it was like the sun came out for the label and the band and the fans and fans of indie music.
There was a big difference between This Charming Man and Club Tropicana. You know, there was a big fucking difference to me. It meant the world to me that I could explain what that difference was to almost everybody I met.
I would go out tonight, but I haven't got a stitch to wear.
What they made me recognise was that pop records were a great art form. 3 minutes could change your life completely, or they could make you get out of the dreary existence you had and save you from it.
A jumped up country boy.
To promote its first hit single, Rough Trade hired London Records, a major label sales force, and mounted an expensive marketing campaign.
I would go out tonight, but I haven't got a stitch to wear.
It was certainly unusual for Rough Trade to be spending a lot of money on this blanket poster campaign. But it wasn't an issue of them sitting around going, oh, you know, does it go against our principles? They were like, we've got a record that demands a poster campaign. Fantastic, it's all going to come together. They were still Rough Trade Records, doing things in an independent way, and they had a band who wanted to be with them, who were about to have this big run of singles. And they were high on the success they were about to have as a label, and we were high on our success. And it was like a perfect kind of union at that time.
A string of Smith's hits followed, but there were internal murmurings of discontent as Rough Trade sales strategies began to mimic the marketing machines of the major labels.
Their LP called The Smiths is coming out on February the 24th, and they've got a hit single called What Difference Does It Make?
You break a single the first week, right? And then the third week is crucial. Does it drop or does it go up to 36?
Here they are, The Smiths. This week's number 20, What Difference Does It Make?
If it goes up to 36, oh, you might break it. Get a plugger. You start getting more and more professionals in, more and more expertise. You apply these, you know, these devices to this thing and try to make it happen in some terms. You start playing the game.
Number 23 this week, The Smiths. Would you like to marry me? And if you like to come by the ring.
I can remember Jeff saying to me one day that Morrissey was going to be the new Boy George. And I remember thinking, is that what I'm coming to work for? Is that what we really need? And I was astounded that there was that kind of change.
We only have one thing to say to that.
But heaven knows I'm miserable now.
Things had changed. I had appointments at Vernon Yard with the guy who ran Virgin Records, and I was negotiating with him about how many signed copies of Smith's records he was going to get, who was going to get the T-shirts. Suddenly we had licensing in Germany, Austria, the gas territories, Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. Suddenly, you know, it's in Japan we have a record out. You got to satisfy Woolies, you got to satisfy Our Price, you got to satisfy Virgin, you got to satisfy HMV. You're part of a machine.
For the label, I think it was definitely a period of re-evaluation internally, you know, because it was quite dogmatic, this collective, democratic, immovable model that it had set itself up as. But it really needed to move forward, and Jeff in particular, I think, wanted that and knew that.
They were the best group around. They were making music that, even though it was strange, it was still hugely commercial potential. And I think if we were going to have any chance of keeping them, and perhaps by then I would got fed up of losing these artists and thought, well, you know, we need to do this job properly now.
Rough Trade was becoming more business-orientated. In 1984, Richard Scott secured the lease on a warehouse near King's Cross, and the company left its spiritual home in West London. This would be the new headquarters of a now global outfit with offices throughout Europe and in America. Rough Trade had never been so big or so profitable. Qualified professionals were recruited to manage its growth, and they demanded changes to the business that meant sacrificing many of Rough Trade's original collective values.
On the streets of Birmingham, I wonder to myself.
war was also brewing on another front. Despite a #1 album and 6 top 20 singles by 1986, the Smiths' relationship with Rough Trade was becoming increasingly antagonistic.
Studio time was always at a minimum. For me, that was a bit of a problem. Some records didn't arrive at some places on time occasionally. There was some issue with that Joke Isn't Funny Anymore, where I think there weren't enough records pressed. And the band had no manager, so the two principal members of the group are dealing with the label. And it's like any relationship, you know, you spend a lot of time together and there's a lot of issues and a lot of things at stake. So, like, things get blown out of proportion. I mean, Rough Trade weren't exactly blameless, but it wasn't like a catalogue of catastrophe or anything like that.
I mean, Morrissey always used to say things like, we're never on the radio. And of course, they were on the radio. They did have a series of hit records, but I think they just felt they should have more. And I mean, that's understandable but irrational. I mean, the Smiths were not making, you know, anodyne, pretty pop records for 14-year-old girls. Therefore, they're not going to sell as many records as Duran Duran. It's just a fact of life. You have to get used to that, Morrissey.
Sweetness, I was only joking when I said by rights you should be bludgeoned in your bed.
During the recording of the third album, The Queen is Dead, in 1986, the Smiths tried to sign to EMI. Yet again, Rough Trade looked set to lose its biggest act, but this time it had the protection of a contract.
We were stupid. You know, we had a couple of people around us who gave us incorrect and bad advice. You know, and this lawyer saying, well, go and sign to someone else and shopping for a deal, and we didn't really have the rights to do that. And Rough Trade said, hang on a minute, you know, you owe us a couple more albums. So it caused this sort of like standoff, and then we were told, this record that you're working on is going to be injuncted. This lawyer told me that. And that was a bit of a buzz killer. You know, when you're trying to make a record, like, guess what? It's not going to come out. Right.
Because they didn't have a manager, they lacked any kind of voice that gave them some semblance of reality. I think that's what described them.
We didn't have calming, organising presence. And that led to a lot of chaos and a lot of drama and a lot of neurosis, and ultimately the band's demise. But all of that drama and intensity went into the music. You can hear it in the music.
The Queen is Dead was released on Rough Trade, but after the next record, the Smiths were free to leave. Strange Ways Here We Come was to be their last release on Rough Trade, but the band was falling apart, and it would be their last album, full stop.
In the end, they signed to EMI, and they never gave EMI a record.
I am the sun and the air.
The Smiths' departure was demoralizing, but income from their sales continued to roll in long after they'd gone, and the future